do a little introduction real quick of myself. My name is Tyler Sherrod. I'm from North Carolina. I have been doing bonsai for probably about, 10 years now. About 7 years ago, I made my way to Japan through Boone out in California. I was studying with him. He helped me get to Japan when I found out this was what I wanted to do. I trained under Shinji Suzuki in Nagano, Japan. I was there for a little over 5 years. I've been certified by the Japanese Nippon Bonsai Association, which only a few people in the world, foreigners, have had that recognition. I've been back now for about 2 years here in the States and pretty much just traveling, trying to get my name out there, meeting everybody, meeting the bonsai community. I've traveled pretty much anywhere you can think of. There's a club or private work, I've been there in the States. So I've kind of seen a little bit of everything, and as far as the trees, seen a little bit of everything the United States has to offer. So it's been really good to be back, and what we're going to do today is I've been presented with this material, Procumbens Juniper. I'm going to start taking you through the process of if Mr. Suzuki brought this into the nursery and said, this is your work. How do I approach a tree like this? What do you do on a tree like this? So I'm going to start taking you through the processes of the first step. I go here, here, here. A tree like this, we'd probably get this, and as you work your way up in the seniority system, the more senior you are, the less of the grunt work you have to do. So as far as cleaning out the trees, cleaning up the dead wood, cleaning up the bark, the younger guys would do that. So once you start getting to your third, fourth, fifth, sixth year, the trees kind of come to you ready to be wired, and you've already kind of made your way through all those steps, so you don't have to do that work. That's the younger guys' work. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to start showing you through this. So we'd get a tree like this, and ideally you'd spend maybe about a day cleaning it up, really working on the dead wood, really cleaning up the bark, all the branches, cleaning out all the dead leaves and matter in it. From there you'd sit down, kind of study the tree a little bit, and then probably a tree like this, it'd be about a half day, maybe about a day, you'd work on it and spend wiring it and really working it. So you can imagine here we got, a couple hours. There's no way we're going to leave today with a finished bonsai. So what we're going to do is set it up to really start out with those first steps, and then you can see the progression to, hopefully a tree like this, I would say, I would put it on about a 5-year plan of from here to wanting to try to get it into a show. In about 5 years, you should be able to grow this tree out. It should be full enough to really be show worthy, in my opinion. So as I'm doing this, I'm going to probably jump around, talk about random things here and there. But any questions y'all have, just throw it out to me, whether it's about my time in Japan, whether it's about this tree back here in the States, whatever. Just ask me any questions. I'll be glad to answer them. So the first thing you want to do, get a tree like this, we go through and we actually go through and start cleaning out all the dead matter. I did spend a little bit this afternoon kind of trying to clean it out a little bit and studying the tree as I was going. First thing you do, start cleaning out that dead matter, open the tree up a little bit, cutting away any excessive branches that absolutely you don't need. And that obviously comes from time working on trees. You start noticing things, well, I don't need this, I don't need this. A lot of times you get like a branch like this that's growing out pretty long and leggy. You've got a lot of interior foliage in here, a lot of strong foliage. I know automatically you can just come in here and you cut quite a bit of that off. And that gives you a better idea that you can start seeing the tree a little bit. So cleaning it up, cutting away the branches that you absolutely know you don't need, that's where you would start. So taking some of that mass off of there, and then you can kind of start seeing the tree just a little bit more. So I got a little, did anybody get a chance to look at the tree and study it and find their front?
There we go.
No? Good, because I can make up stuff. Okay, so looking at this tree, if you can kind of see, so move the branches around a little bit, get a good view in there. So you can see we got a pretty uninteresting slant going on right here, making our way up to where all this mass of foliage is on this side of the trunk. Right here at the base, we have this main trunk or this main branch that splits off right here with all this massive foliage on it. So in kind of studying it, when you're working on a tree, one of the first things you want to ask yourself is the tree old? Is it young? Is it fat? Is it skinny? Those are two questions that are going to kind of start helping you get on the track of this is how I should work on the tree. So a tree like this, is it old? Is it young? Is it fat? Or is it skinny? Question to you guys.
Older.
Older?
Yeah. And it's fat on one side for sure.
Okay. Anybody else agree, disagree? Too shy to talk? Alright, so I look at this tree. I would say as far as junipers goes, now you've seen, was it Huey out there? Big, fat tree, really, really old tree. So to me that's fat and old. You're going to design the tree with these big, massive branches, big pads, and a real full foliage mass. That's how you're going to want to design a tree like this. To me, this tree is more, it's definitely on the older side for Procumbens junipers. I would estimate this tree is probably, you have any idea exactly? I would say it's probably
in the 50-year range.
I would say it's actually getting close to 100 years old. You know, between 50 and 100. I dealt with a lot of these. I've got a lot of them. What?
Nursery pot thing.
That's right. So in Florida, they grow these a lot. Bring them up to North Carolina and sell them, use them for bonsai material. I've got quite a few of these that are, some trunks on them this big, that they're about 30 years old.
Okay.
So I'd say something like this. Most likely, it's been grown in the container for most of its life. I'd say with a girth on it like this, as big as it's got, I'd say it's definitely over 50 years old. So for bonsai, that's still kind of young for a tree, actually. It's not hundreds of years old like some of the trees we deal with. But as far as growing it for bonsai purposes, that's starting to get pretty old. Fat, is it skinny? To me, this is definitely more of a skinny tree, more elegant type tree.
You're wrong, Roger. Yeah. So was I, by the way.
So I look at this and say it's skinny, older, but it's not necessarily really, really old, but it's not a brand spanking new trunk. So when you do that, that's going to start kind of dictating where do I go with this tree. So older, skinnier tree, a little bit more elegant, softer pads on it. We want to really try to reduce the foliage amount so it, proportion-wise, it feels like it really emphasizes the most interesting parts of that trunk. So the next thing you want to think, what is the interesting part of the tree? Whatever that interesting part is, whether it's the dead wood, whether it's the branches, whether it's the live vein on it, whether it's the taper from the base of the trunk all the way to the top, you want to frame that and really show that off. So that's your goal. Anytime you're styling a tree, you want to say, where's the interesting part? What am I trying to do with this tree? What am I trying to show off? And then frame that with the foliage. So again, I'll use your Huey for example. And actually this tree, this is the ash juniper he's got back, or the one seed you got back here. You look at a tree like that, really interesting part on it is that ribbon band going up. And he was telling me a story that Daisaku and Boone, I believe they were talking about it, and saying, well, right at the top of that apex there, you have that nice dead wood starts to work its way into the foliage. He had some foliage that was actually covering that up. And they're saying, you gotta expose that. That's the interesting part. Start framing that. Use those branches to show off that, to frame that interesting part. That's really important in bonsai, is really trying to figure out what is interesting about this tree, how do I frame it? Deciduous trees, a little bit different. We like those with a nice base, the nice nabari, good taper from the base of the trunk all the way to the top of the tree. So with that, we really want to frame it by bringing all the branches around and showing that body, the taper as it goes from the base to the top. Then from the base of the branches all the way out to the ends of the branches, really nice taper from that base out to really refined branching. So that's how you start thinking about framing the tree. Now a tree like this where you have quite a bit of dead wood that's going to come off of it, we would spend quite a while really honing this dead wood in and spend some time carving it and whittling it down here and there. It's So really, this is almost a job that takes quite a while to really get a hang of it and do a good job of it. So now we make the tree a lot smaller. So the next thing I'm looking for is, again, going back to specifically on these guys. So I've done a lot of work on these guys since I've been back in the States. We love using these. We didn't use them much in Japan, mainly because of the foliage. The foliage on these guys tends to really vary from that mature foliage, like you see right here, to that juvenile foliage. And a lot of times you can have both those on the tree at the same time, whereas the Japanese foliage, the Shinpaku, Itoigawa, Kishu, when, they typically don't revert unless they're really, really stressed to that juvenile foliage. And when they have that mature foliage all the time, it just really makes a nice pad. So these, to me, I'm not a huge fan of this foliage because it will go back and forth between that mature and juvenile foliage. So the first thing we'll start doing is start looking at some of those long areas that I know we just can push back and cut back a little bit. So for example, this guy right here, pretty big branch, up a little bit higher on the tree, pretty long, not a whole lot of taper from the base of it all the way out to this end. So I'm looking for something to cut back to. I'm looking for a more interior foliage pad, a branch that's strong enough that I can cut back X amount and still keep X amount, but it's going to be strong enough to continue to keep that branch alive. If you cut back too hard on a juniper, on a branch with not a whole lot of foliage left over, it can end up killing back. So make sure whatever you're cutting back to is strong enough that it can take over and continue to survive. So we've got this long stretch right here, a good amount of foliage right here up toward the top. I'll go ahead and cut back to that. So same thing right here. Got this branch right here at the end. This is on the interior, up toward the base further here. Not a whole lot going on right here. Not a whole lot of taper. It's pretty long and leggy. We have this amount of foliage pad that's really good. I'm take it all the way back to that guy. Looking at the rest of it, what's left on it, it's still pretty long and leggy. We have a lot of good interior branches right here, pretty strong. We'll be a little bit more aggressive on it. Now we start taking So anytime, whether it's deciduous trees, conifers, pine trees, junipers, during the right time of year, and each one's different, when you're doing your cut back on it, you always want to make sure that you let things grow. When things grow long and get a little bit leggy, that helps that whole branch as a whole get stronger. It helps those interior buds that you have in here get stronger by pulling energy all throughout that branch. When those interior buds get strong enough that they can be that new guy, they can take over and grow out from there, that's when you cut those back, cut the ends back, and let the interior guys take over. That's a process that you're thinking about all the time in bonsai, is growing things out to keep the branch strong, cutting it back to what can take over. That process repeats over and over and over. And that's how through time you create really good ramification, really good taper on branches. So we have a lot of deadwood in here. For example, this one right here is going to be a nice little interesting deadwood feature. This one, once this gets cut back a little bit, this one over here is going to be nice. And up toward the top, we're going to have this nice feature in here with some of this deadwood. So now I've kind of got the tree to the point where I'm starting to think about, okay, fronts a little bit. See, I really haven't even thought about a front. It's more about taking away what I know we don't need and keeping what we do need. Now we can start seeing the tree a little bit better, start thinking about tilting it if we need to, which side's going to be the better front. do we need to pick a front right now? A lot of times on a tree in this stage, we don't know exactly. You can always pick a front, but sometimes over time that changes a little bit as a branch matures, as maybe a branch dies off in the future for some reason. That front can kind of change a little bit. So for me, I've started to tend to like this side is the front a little bit more. We have this branch that's coming, or this gen that'll be nice right there. Still have a good look at this gen right here. Good branches, we can bring some of this down, and a nice apex up here. So right now that's kind of where I'm looking, but again, like I said at the beginning, this is going to have some nice deadwood on it up in here, so that might be a feature we want to show off. So once we get to this step, now we'll actually go through and start cleaning up the tree a little bit. So I've got just a wire brush. I'll start with the wire brush, and I don't go all the way out to the ends of the branch, but go to where that foliage is starting to form a little bit. It's just I guess it's a brass.
Copper, stainless, brass.
It's brass.
Brass.
I would use this typically for doing junipers. They make some that's a nylon brush, a green brush, and I'll use those on deciduous trees. We're trying to clean some of that grime off of them, especially in the fall time. So if y'all know, does anybody know Mr. Suzuki? Have you heard the name?
Heard the name.
He's a younger professional, or I'd say younger, but he's in his mid-50s now. He's won Sakafu, which is the professional award. He's won that 5 times, which is the most out of any professional. So he was really young, guys. Do what?
I think we saw a video.
Okay.
First win.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
he changed the face of bonsai, basically.
he really has.
Going
He's-
to the more natural style than the traditional.
Definitely, I would say,
Hardcore.
Kimura was a big change in techniques, really being, the magician doing some crazy stuff to trees. So Mr. Kimura and Mr. Suzuki are actually the same family. So I'm in the same family as the Kimura family. We're all part of the same family.